Friends, in the days after Noah's flood, there flowed the magnificent river Saraswati from Himalayas all the way to the Arabian Sea, and many people groups settled on either side of that river. It was a grand river like Ganges, or even better, the Indian Vedas rave about this river. Considering its width, depth and the flow, they called it a fort of iron, surpassing the majesty and the might of all other rivers. However, it all dried up hardly in a span of 600 years. But how is this even possible, one may ask? Well, to find the answer to this question, we need to know what happened before Manu's Mahajalapralay, which is Noah's flood, and why God had to destroy the entire earth with the flood. Well, God had brought forth Noah's flood because the watchers and their offspring, the giants, the Nephilim, had messed up God's creation through miscegenation. Miscegenation is altering God's creation through crossbreeding, bestiality, altering the DNA, and physical intervention. These actions can destroy God's creation, including humanity, in no time. That's why this is very serious. However, when civilization started all over again, the devil and his human companions, such as Noah's son Ham and his son Cush, known as Kashyapa in Hinduism, indulged in the very same activities. This is what Hinduism hints at when they say that all the living beings were born of Kashyap's 10 wives. So God, our Creator, had to deal with them before things got out of hand. Here, I'm not talking about any entity which plays God and deceives people in this world. I am talking about the one who created Adam and Eve. In fact, it is very easy to trace back to this God because there are only 9 generations of humans which spanned 2,556 years between Adam and the great flood of Noah, known as Jalapralaya of Manu in India. It was possible because an average human lived about 1,000 years in those days. Now, coming back to our story, when there was rebellion in the land of Mesopotamia, God pulled back the shoreline of Persian Sea for about 150 kilometers and thus rendering the pagan centers high and dry, which used to be at the shores of the Persian Gulf. He also dealt with the Minoans and the people of Kumari Nadu, later at Sodom and Gomorrah, and much more. Again, in the Arabian Peninsula, when Lucifer trapped some heavenly horses and turned them into war machines, God cursed that land, for which it is dry even today. However, the same breeding of horses was taking place in the Rajasthan region as well, so he cursed that land. That is why the monsoon winds that originate in the Arabian Sea and go all the way to the Himalayas to shed its rain over there have been promptly skipping the Thar desert of the Rajasthan region for the past 5,000 years, even though the conditions are changing recently and God is doing certain things in Rajasthan. Now, let's talk about the people who lived along the banks of River Saraswati. Ancient Indian history involves 3 groups of people. One was the morally degraded people of Puru, who had come from Uttarakuru, a region north of the Himalayas, who practiced free sex. The Adi Parva section of Mahabharata states that there was free love among the people of Uttarakuru, like the one followed by the birds and the beasts, is not sinful since it had the approval of the rishis and the sanction of antiquity. Now, the second group of people, though headed by Shem, the righteous son of Noah, were soma addicts, consuming a potion made of an intoxicating plant that they had found on their way to India from Aratha. They turned the sacrifices ordained of God as an occasion to get drunk and feast on the meat of the sacrificed animal. The Iranian Avesta explicitly condemns it. It states that Ahura Mazda will punish them severely for their misdeed. No matter what spin people would want to put on the situation, God wasn't happy. Now, there was a third group of people on the other side of Saraswati, which were the Harappans. They were the enemies of both the Purus and Shem's people. The Rig Veda calls them Dasyus. By the way, they were the children of Cush and the early ones to mix with the fallen entities. That is miscegenation too. And again, if you look at the western end of the Gangetic settlements, there is a kingdom called Matsya, meaning it is of the fish. Well, this kingdom used to be on the shores of River Saraswati, and there was a merman from that river who mated with 40 different women whose descendants formed the people of this kingdom. Again, God did not like it. Now, let's talk about Indra killing Vritra. Vritra was a mixed creature born of miscegenation who built a dam across a river around 2800 BC when the Vedic Saraswati river was already drying up. This shows that mixed creatures were also occupying the banks of River Saraswati. These are all abominations to God, our Creator. By the way, one can also find Zeus, who is in fact Indra, slaying Typhoon in Greek mythology. It is just a repetition of the same incident that took place in India. Prometheus bringing down the fire and the technology of wheels arriving at our world, or other similar things that happened in India which are reported in Greek mythology. Then, our Creator was particular about us not defiling His planet. When Gideon was erecting a sacrificial altar in the Bible, He told him to use only naturally formed stones and not the ones chiseled with human hands, because that would defile the altar. In the same manner, God hated bricks as well. For example, Abraham, who had lived in his father's palatial quarters, became a tent dweller after meeting with Yahweh God. Here, it may be worth emphasizing that Saraswati River region was the birthplace of bricks, and the builders of Tower of Babel came from this region, and that's why the Bible states that men who built the Tower of Babel came from the east, and we all know what happened to their venture. Now, can I throw in one more interesting tidbit here? In the Holy Bible, when some person is very bad, the Bible would skip them entirely and won't mention that person's name at all. One of them was Noah's wife. You can't find her name in the Bible. Now, after the flood, the pagans made Noah the Brahma in order to hide the true Creator, who was known as Brahman by the ancient Indians. Today they will tell you that Brahma's wife is Saraswati. So they named River Saraswati after Noah's wife, whom God was not pleased with. Maybe she was supporting her son Ham and his son Cush while they were involved in their genetic experiments under Lucifer's supervision. God did not like that either. Well, Yahweh being original, He has His likes and dislikes and the reasons behind them, and none of us can do anything about it. Even though He has reconciled quite a bit with humanity because of His Son Jesus, He used to be strict with a lot of things in the beginning, such as breeding of horses, melting of iron, keeping dogs, having children outside of wedlock, and so on. Well, these are the reasons as to why God turned the mighty river Saraswati to dust, friends. Thanks for watching.